This whole situation with my daughter, Chloe, has left me feeling like I'm wading through quicksand. Every step I take seems to pull me deeper into the mess. I never thought I'd be in this position, estranged from my own child, watching her make choices that seemed destined to break her heart. It all started when Chloe was 12, right after her mom, Amelia, and I divorced. It wasn't a messy split, but it still shook Chloe's world. Amelia remarried within a year and quickly had 3 more kids, a girl, then twin boys. While Amelia embraced her new family, Chloe felt increasingly like an outsider. At first, I didn't grasp the depth of her pain. I thought she just needed time to adjust. But as the months passed, it became clear that she felt pushed aside, replaced in her mother's life. Amelia wasn't exactly subtle about her priorities, showering her new kids with attention while Chloe often seemed invisible. I knew I had to step up. I became Chloe's rock, the one constant in her life. I worked longer hours to provide for her, attended every school event, and celebrated every milestone. I was determined to be the parent she could always count on. Looking back, I wonder if I overcompensated. Did I shield her too much, give her too much, and inadvertently prevent her from learning to stand on her own 2 feet? Things started to unravel when Chloe decided to take a break from high school. She was 16, and she claimed she needed time to figure things out. I wasn't thrilled, but I wanted to be supportive. Not every kid follows the same path, right? Some need more time to find their way. But what began as a soul-searching sabbatical quickly devolved into aimless drifting. Instead of exploring new interests or focusing on her future, Chloe spent her days glued to her phone, watching TV, and hanging out with friends I didn't trust. They were a bad influence, encouraging her apathy and lack of direction. Every attempt to talk to her about it ended in an argument. She'd accuse me of not understanding, of not supporting her. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to balance my desire to be supportive with the growing concern that she was veering off course. The breaking point came when I caught her sneaking out one night. She exploded at me, her words laced with venom. She didn't see my concern, only my attempts to control her. That night, I lay awake, questioning my every parenting decision. Had I been too lenient? Had I given her too much freedom? Or was this simply the fallout from the divorce, the pain of feeling abandoned by her mother? Desperate, I suggested therapy. Chloe agreed, and for a while things seemed to improve. She was calmer, more open to talking about her feelings. But then she'd quit, usually as soon as the session started delving into uncomfortable truths. This cycle repeated for years. Therapy, quitting, acting out, repeat. I tried everything I could think of. Late-night talks, family vacations, even bribes. I bought her the latest gadgets, hoping they might spark some motivation. Nothing worked. Finally, after 2 long years, Chloe agreed to go back to school. I was overjoyed. I thought we had turned a corner, that she was finally ready to take her life seriously. But that relief was short-lived. Chloe's return to school brought a fragile sense of normalcy. She seemed more focused, more engaged. But then, she met Noah. Noah was 26, a delivery driver for his parents' bakery. He'd dropped out of high school and had been drifting through life ever since. His idea of ambition was seeing where the road takes me. At first, I tried to be open-minded. Honest work is honest work, and not everyone is meant for college. But as their relationship deepened, I started seeing the red flags. Noah wasn't just aimless, he was reckless. He'd already been married once, at 21. That marriage imploded within 6 months because, in his words, it just wasn't working. It didn't take a genius to see that this guy wasn't ready for any kind of commitment, let alone marriage. Chloe, of course, was blind to all of this. Noah was charming and funny, and he made her feel special in a way she hadn't felt in years. I wanted to be happy for her, to trust her judgment. But everything about their relationship screamed disaster. Then, out of the blue, Chloe announced they were getting married. It wasn't a discussion, it wasn't a request for advice, it was a declaration. She'd already set the date and started planning the wedding, all without telling me. When I tried to talk to her about it, she shut me down. "You're just jealous because I'm happy," she'd say, her voice dripping with teenage disdain. How do you argue with someone so blinded by infatuation? How do you convince your child they're making a mistake when they're convinced they know better? I felt helpless, watching her rush headfirst into a situation I knew would only bring her pain. It was a harsh realization. No matter how much you love your child, you can't protect them from their own choices. Chloe's wedding plans moved forward at a dizzying pace. She brushed off my concerns about finances, living arrangements, and their lack of any real future plan. "We'll figure it out," she'd say. "Love is all we need." I tried to explain that love doesn't pay the bills, that marriage requires more than just romance, but she wasn't interested in practicalities. "You're stuck in the past, Dad," she'd retort. "You don't understand." I felt a growing sense of dread. This wasn't a phase, this wasn't teenage rebellion. She was genuinely convinced this was the right decision, and nothing I said was going to change her mind. In a last-ditch effort, I asked to meet Noah. Maybe I could appeal to his sense of responsibility, make him see the potential consequences of his actions. We met at a local diner. Noah was polite, even charming, but it quickly became clear that he had no concept of what he was getting into. He had no savings, no budget, and no long-term goals. He simply planned to figure it out as we go. I tried to reason with him. "Chloe's still in school. She doesn't have a job. Are you prepared to support her financially?" His answer? "We'll manage. Love is more important than money." That's when I knew this was a disaster waiting to happen. Noah wasn't a bad guy, but he was utterly unprepared for the realities of marriage. And Chloe, still struggling to find her own footing, was about to jump into a situation that would likely drag her down. When I got home, I sat Chloe down for another conversation. I expressed my concerns and pleaded with her to reconsider. "I'm not trying to control your life," I said. "I just want what's best for you." Her response was ice cold. "If you can't support me, then I don't want you at my wedding." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. My own daughter was banning me from her wedding because I didn't approve of her reckless decision. That night, I made a difficult choice. If she didn't want me at her wedding, I wasn't going to pay for it. Chloe had been planning her wedding with my credit card, the one I'd given her for emergencies. The next morning, I froze it. It didn't take long for her to notice. Within hours, she was bombarding me with angry calls and texts. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed. "You're trying to sabotage my happiness." I tried to stay calm. "Chloe," I said, "if you're old enough to make adult decisions, you're old enough to handle the consequences. If you don't want me at your wedding, I'm not going to pay for it." Her response was predictable. She called me selfish, controlling, heartless. She accused me of trying to ruin her life. But for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I loved Chloe more than anything, but I couldn't keep enabling her destructive choices. If she wanted to act like an adult, she needed to learn to take responsibility for her actions. As much as it hurt, I knew I was doing the right thing. Freezing her credit card didn't stop the wedding, though. Chloe and Noah simply found another way to finance it, alone. They were starting their life together, buried in debt, a fact that filled me with a sense of foreboding. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. Chloe avoided me, only emerging from her room to grab food or leave the house. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Desperate to reach her, I called in reinforcements. My mother, Evelyn. Chloe had always been close to her grandmother, and I hoped Evelyn might be able to get through to her. Evelyn was a force of nature, a woman who never minced words. When I explained the situation, she sighed. "That girl is just like her mother," she said, "stubborn as a mule and too proud to admit when she's wrong. But I'll talk to her." We arranged a family meeting with Evelyn leading the charge. Chloe sat across from us, arms crossed, face set in a defiant scowl. Evelyn didn't waste any time. "Chloe," she began, "marriage isn't just about love. It's about commitment, responsibility, and planning. Have you and Noah thought about any of that? How are you going to support yourselves? Do you have savings, a budget, and a plan for the future?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "We'll figure it out, Grandma. Times have changed. It's not like it was in your day." Evelyn's expression hardened. "You think times have changed, but the basics haven't. Love doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't keep a roof over your head or food on the table. You need a solid foundation to build a life together. And from what your dad's told me, you and Noah don't have that." Chloe remained silent, her defiance unwavering. Evelyn continued, sharing stories about her own struggles when she and my father first got married. She talked about the sacrifices they made, the financial hardships they faced, and how they worked together to build a stable life. "Marriage isn't a fairy tale, Chloe," she said. "It's hard work, and if you're not ready for that, it'll fall apart faster than you can imagine." Chloe finally spoke, her voice cold and distant. "You don't understand. Noah and I know what we're doing. We love each other, and that's all that matters." Evelyn shook her head. "You're making a mistake, and you're too stubborn to see it. But if you won't listen to me or your dad, then maybe you need to learn the hard way." With that, she stood up and left the room. I could see the frustration in her eyes, the shared sense of helplessness. As much as I wanted to believe Chloe would come to her senses, deep down, I knew she wouldn't. A week later, the wedding took place. I wasn't invited, of course, but my neighbor Lily, whose daughter was a childhood friend of Chloe's, filled me in on the details. "It was okay, I guess," Lily told me. "They had a small venue, some flowers, even a live band. But you could tell the whole thing was thrown together at the last minute." She hesitated, then added, "Noah's parents didn't look happy. They were polite, but you could see it in their faces. They think this is a bad idea too." Hearing that didn't make me feel any better. I had hoped Noah's parents might be able to influence him, but apparently they were just as powerless as I was. On the day of the wedding, I stayed home, trying to distract myself. I told myself it didn't matter, that it wasn't worth getting upset over. But deep down, I was heartbroken. Every father dreams of walking his daughter down the aisle, of seeing her start a new chapter in her life surrounded by love and support. Instead, I sat alone in my living room, wondering where it all went wrong. Before Chloe left for the ceremony, I slipped a note into her room. It wasn't much, just a few words wishing her the best and hoping she'd find happiness, even if I didn't agree with her choices. As much as I was against this wedding, I couldn't bring myself to wish ill on my own daughter. A couple of months passed. Chloe moved out, and the silence was deafening. She didn't call, didn't visit, and didn't even text. The pain was sharp, but I told myself it was for the best. She needed to figure things out on her own. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. It was Noah. Noah looked like a shadow of his former self. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by exhaustion and worry. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. "What's going on?" I asked, already dreading the answer. He sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing his hands together nervously. "We're struggling," he admitted. "The loan payments are more than we expected, and rent's gone up. I've picked up extra shifts, but it's not enough. Chloe's been applying for jobs, but..." He trailed off, and I knew exactly what he meant. Chloe was a high school dropout with limited work experience. The job she could get wouldn't pay much, and knowing her, she was probably being picky. "We're behind on everything. Rent, utilities, the loan payments," Noah continued, his voice filled with despair. "We're drowning, and I don't know what to do. I was hoping maybe you could help us out, just until we get back on our feet." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. He was clearly struggling, desperate even. But another part of me couldn't forget the arrogance he'd displayed when I'd tried to warn him about the realities of marriage. "Noah," I said, my voice steady, "when you and Chloe decided to get married, you told me that love was all you needed, that money didn't matter. Do you still believe that?" He looked down at his hands, avoiding my gaze. "I was wrong," he mumbled. I nodded. "I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't help you. This is your mess, and you need to figure out how to fix it." The hope drained from his face. "You won't even help a little? Just enough to get us through this rough patch?" "No," I said firmly. "Chloe made it very clear that she didn't want me involved in her life. If that's how she feels, then I'm respecting her wishes." He sat there for a moment, his shoulders slumped, before finally standing up. "I understand," he said quietly. "Thanks anyway." As he walked out the door, I felt a pang of sympathy, but I pushed it aside. This was the only way they would learn. If I bailed them out now, they'd never take responsibility for their decisions. That night, Chloe called. She was furious. "How could you turn Noah away like that?" she yelled. "He came to you in good faith, and you humiliated him." I sighed, already weary of this conversation. "Chloe, you're the one who wanted me out of your life. You can't expect me to step in now just because things aren't going your way." "You're heartless," she screamed. "You don't care about me at all." I forced myself to remain calm. "I care about you more than you realize. That's why I'm letting you face the consequences of your actions. This is what adulthood looks like, Chloe. It's not all romance and fairy tales. It's hard work and responsibility." She hung up on me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. A few weeks later, I thought the dust had settled. Chloe wasn't speaking to me, and I didn't try to reach out. I figured she needed space, and I wasn't going to push. As much as it hurt to see her struggling, I knew she had to learn this lesson on her own. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed with a series of frantic texts from Chloe. "Dad, are you awake? Please, I need to talk to you. I don't know what to do." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. My first thought was that something had happened to Noah. An accident, an emergency. I called her immediately. "Chloe, what's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. There was a long pause, and when she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. "I think I might be pregnant." The news of Chloe's possible pregnancy hit me like a ton of bricks. Of all the things I'd expected, this wasn't one of them. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No," she admitted, "but I'm late, and I have a feeling." She was crying now, the fear palpable through the phone. "Dad, we can't handle this. We're already behind on rent and bills. How are we supposed to take care of a baby?" I wanted to say, "This is what you signed up for," but I couldn't bring myself to be harsh. No matter how much Chloe had hurt me, she was still my daughter, and she was scared. "Okay," I said gently. "The first step is to confirm it. I'll schedule a doctor's appointment for you tomorrow. Until then, take a deep breath and try not to panic." The next morning, I took Chloe to a local clinic. She was a nervous wreck the whole way there, biting her nails and fidgeting. I waited in the car while she went inside. 30 minutes later, she came out, her face pale and drawn. "They want me to wait a week before taking another test," she said quietly. "It's too early to tell for sure." The next week was agonizing. Chloe barely slept, pacing around their cramped apartment, texting me constantly for advice and reassurance. I could tell she was terrified, and for the first time in months, she actually wanted my support. During one of our conversations, she brought up Noah. "Dad, do you think you could hire him at your agency just for a little while until we get back on our feet?" I ran a small creative agency that required a specific skill set. Noah didn't have those skills, and frankly, I doubted he had the work ethic to learn them. But Chloe was desperate, and I could feel the pressure building. "Let's wait for the results of your test," I told her. "We'll figure things out after that." But she wasn't satisfied. "You're just making excuses," she snapped. "Why can't you ever help when I need you?" Her accusations stung, but I held my ground. "Chloe, I'm not going to make a decision until we know what we're dealing with. Let's take this one step at a time." Thankfully, the pregnancy scare turned out to be just that, a scare. When Chloe got the results of her second test, she wasn't pregnant. I thought the relief might humble her, but instead it seemed to fuel her defiance. "You wouldn't even hire Noah," she said bitterly during one of our arguments. "What kind of father doesn't help his daughter when she's struggling?" I sighed. "Chloe, I've done nothing but try to help you your entire life, but you've made it clear that you don't want me involved. You can't have it both ways." She crossed her arms and glared at me. "You know everything you have is going to be mine one day. You could at least act like you care about my future." Her words floored me. "Chloe, nothing is guaranteed. You think you're entitled to everything I've worked for, That's not how it works. I might retire early or travel or even get married again. What I leave behind is up to me, not you." Her face twisted in anger. "You're selfish," she spat. "You don't care about anyone but yourself." I didn't even argue. There was no point. Over the next few weeks, our relationship grew even colder. Chloe stopped calling, and when I tried to reach out, she ignored me. I could feel the distance widening between us, and it broke my heart. I thought about giving in, sending her money, and offering to help Noah find a job. But I knew it would only make things worse. Chloe needed to learn the hard way. She needed to understand that her actions had consequences and that she couldn't keep relying on me to bail her out. But that didn't make it any easier. Every day, I thought about calling her, about trying to mend the rift between us. But I knew that as long as she refused to take responsibility for her choices, nothing would change. A few days later, I got a call from my ex-wife, Amelia. She was furious. "How could you let Chloe struggle like this?" she demanded. "She's your daughter. You're supposed to help her?" I took a deep breath before responding. "Amelia, I've been helping Chloe her whole life, but this isn't about me anymore. She made her choices and now she has to live with them." Amelia wasn't satisfied. "You're ruining her life," she snapped. "No," I said firmly. "Chloe is in charge of her own life now. If she wants things to change, she needs to take responsibility for herself." Amelia hung up on me, and I sat there for a long time staring at the phone. I hated that things had come to this, but I didn't see any other way. Every day I hoped that Chloe would come around, that she'd see I was only trying to protect her, that everything I did was out of love. But until that day came, all I could do was wait. Months passed in a tense silence, punctuated by sporadic revises from Lily or Chloe's dwindling circle of friends. Chloe and Noah were struggling, their relationship strained by financial woes and their own immaturity. It was heartbreaking to watch from afar, but I held firm to the belief that she needed to learn from her own mistakes. One evening, I received a call from Noah. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice shaky. "I know we haven't talked much since, well, but I wanted to tell you that Chloe isn't doing so great." My stomach clenched. "What do you mean? Is she okay?" "She's just really stressed," Noah explained. "The bills are piling up and she hasn't been able to find a job. We're fighting a lot. I don't know what to do anymore." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I reminded myself that this was the path they had chosen. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "But Noah, you two decided to get married against everyone's advice. You took out a loan to fund a wedding you couldn't afford. You both knew what you were getting into." "I know," he said quietly, "but I thought we could handle it. I didn't realize how hard it would be." Noah's call weighed heavily on my mind. As much as I wanted to swoop in and fix everything, I knew I couldn't. Chloe and Noah needed to learn to navigate their own problems without relying on me. A few days later, Chloe texted. "I need to talk to you," she wrote. I called her immediately, and for the first time in months, she answered. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She took a deep breath. "Noah and I are thinking about moving back in with his parents. We can't afford the apartment anymore, and we're falling behind on everything. I don't know what to do." This was the most vulnerable I'd heard Chloe sound in a long time. For a fleeting moment, I considered offering to let them move in with me. But then I remembered how things had unfolded the last time I tried to help. She didn't want my advice or my rules, she just wanted my resources. "Have you talked to Noah's parents about it?" I asked instead. "Yeah," she said, her voice small. "They said we could move into their basement, but I don't want to live there. It feels like giving up." "Chloe, sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward," I told her. "If moving in with his parents helps you get back on your feet, then that's what you need to do. It's not giving up, it's being practical." She didn't respond right away, and when she finally did, her tone was defensive. "You wouldn't understand. You've never had to go through this." I sighed. "Chloe, I've made my share of mistakes, but I also learned from them. That's what you need to do. Learn and grow. I can't do it for you." A couple of weeks later, Chloe and Noah moved into his parents' basement. According to Lily, things were tense. Noah's dad was frustrated with their lack of direction, and his mom was tired of cleaning up after them. One evening, Noah's dad called me, venting his frustrations. "I just hope they figure it out before it's too late," he said with a sigh. As the months passed, things didn't improve. Chloe and Noah were constantly arguing, the financial strain taking its toll. Then one day, Chloe called me, crying, "Dad, I think Noah and I made a mistake," she sobbed. "What happened?" I asked, my heart sinking. "He's just not who I thought he was," she explained. "He doesn't help around the house, and he spends all his time complaining about work. I feel like I'm doing everything on my own." I wanted to say, "I told you so," but I held my tongue. "Chloe, marriage is hard. It takes effort from both people. Have you tried talking to him about how you're feeling?" "I've tried," she said, "but he doesn't listen. He just says I'm nagging him." For the first time, I heard doubt in her voice. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize the gravity of her decisions. Despite everything, Chloe still hadn't apologized for banning me from her wedding, or for the way she'd treated me. Part of me wanted to let it go, to focus on rebuilding our relationship. But another part of me couldn't forget how much her actions had hurt. One day, I brought it up during a phone call. "Chloe, can we talk about the wedding?" I asked. "What about it?" she said defensively. "You banned me from one of the most important days of your life. Do you regret that?" There was a long pause. "I was angry," she admitted. "I felt like you didn't support me." "I was trying to protect you," I said. "I've always wanted what's best for you, even when it meant making tough decisions." She didn't respond, and I didn't push. I knew it would take time for her to fully understand the impact of her choices. As of now, Chloe and I are in a better place, but things are far from perfect. She's still stubborn and proud, and I'm still struggling to find the balance between supporting her and letting her learn from her mistakes. Every day, I hope she'll come around and realize that I've always had her best interests at heart. But until then, I'm doing my best to be patient, because that's what being a parent is, loving your child even when they don't make it easy. And maybe, just maybe, this experience will ultimately bring us closer, forging a stronger bond built on understanding, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family.